Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be talking about our top 10 Dynasty players who are at risk due to the 2025 NFL Draft.
Hike!
So in this episode, this is going to be a consensus top 10 between Joe and I. We're going to be talking about players who, depending on how the draft goes, we believe these players could be greatly at risk and their Dynasty values affected as a result. So, Joe, who do we have at number one?
Yeah, number one, we're going with running back Rhamondre Stevenson of the New England Patriots. And, I believe he's at high risk here just because of the fact that, with his fumbling issues, he had 6 fumbles last year, 3 of them lost. We saw him getting benched by the previous coaching staff. Don't know, with the new regime, how much trust factor there is with Rhamondre Stevenson. And, they really don't have a lot of depth there at the running back position. So I definitely think he's at risk and has a lot to lose here with the draft coming up.
Well, yeah, and if you look at it as far as running backs go, Rhamondre Stevenson led the league in fumbles, Joe. He had 6 total fumbles, like you said, 3 lost. So he ended up getting into the doghouse and, was no longer the starter. He was supplanted by Antonio Gibson. So for a guy like him who really has predicated his value on volume, and we saw that he did get that contract extension, and GM Elliott Wolf is still there. But now you got a new head coach with Mike Vrabel and a new offensive coordinator with Josh McDaniel. So things are going to be looking different in New England. And, McDaniel as an offensive coordinator alone isn't necessarily, it kind of doesn't make me all that excited about running back to begin with in New England. And being that this class is so deep, if the Patriots do end up drafting a running back decently high, Rhamondre Stevenson is being put on notice, and I think his value, whatever value he has, is going to drop like a rock. So we're going to talk about a guy who actually has a lot more value, and that's going to be running back Chase Brown of the Cincinnati Bengals, our number 2 pick here. He's a darling of Dynasty right now, and there's a lot of videos out there, podcasts out there that'll tell you go buy this guy. We just talked about buying him as well. Based on all the underlying metrics and numbers, I still believe that. I still think that Chase Brown, could be a really good player coming up for this next season. He's still got 2 years left on his rookie deal, but that doesn't mean that the Bengals won't draft a running back. We saw even, last year we were shocked. Kyron Williams had as good of a year as he did, and they go ahead and they draft Blake Corum. Now, Blake Corum wasn't as involved in the offense, but this is a probably the best running back class we've seen in quite some time. So if the Bengals do end up drafting a running back, it's definitely going to put a damper on Chase Brown, no question about it.
Yeah, it really will, because, right now, behind Chase Brown, you got a couple of veterans, Zach Moss and Samaje Perine coming in as well. But if they do go ahead and draft one, with how good this running back class is, that kind of tells you everything you need to know. And the fact that they'd like to use multiple backs versus, last year, once Moss went down, it was the Chase Brown show. And that's what we're all kind of hoping for and want that to continue to be the case because, he played really well once he got all the opportunities.
Well, he has a lot to gain, right? we're talking about at risk. You could look at it as a positive that he has a lot to gain in the event that he is the standalone guy. It's just you and I both are a little bit nervous about it, so we put it more in the risky category.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because he is at risk if they go ahead and draft somebody, but if they don't, you can go ahead and throw a Chase Brown party and, I hope you get your shares early.
Are you enjoying this episode so far? Well, if you are, subscribe to our YouTube channel, smash that like button, and hit the notification bell for upcoming videos. We do videos throughout the year, so you're not going to want to miss what we have in store. All right, so Joe, who do we got for number 3?
Yeah, number 3, we're staying with the running backs. We got DeAndre Swift with the Chicago Bears. And, look, if I really could see them drafting a running back. You got new coach coming in here. He doesn't have any, real connection to these guys with DeAndre Swift and Roschon Johnson in the running back room there. And not to mention, DeAndre Swift, he did, he had a lot of opportunities. He played pretty well. Obviously almost not too far off of what he honestly did with the Eagles, just with more opportunities. So his average yards per carry was less with a worse offensive line. So his value would definitely go a lot further down if they go ahead, because if the Bears do draft somebody, it's going to be decently high and it's going to be a good one. So that would really affect him.
I don't know if I would agree with you to say that he doesn't have any connection. I mean, Ben Johnson was the offensive coordinator in Detroit, but if you remember, if I'm not mistaken, Dan Campbell, I think they were talking about DeAndre Swift, I think at the scouting combine at the point when he was a free agent, and kind of selling them a bill of goods, talking about how good of a player he was and that he was going to bring them. They were, interested in bringing him back. Well, they didn't bring him back. So, it was a smokescreen. They eventually ended up going and get Jahmyr Gibbs in the first round. So I think at the end of the day, we don't know what Ben Johnson thinks about DeAndre Swift, but could very well be like, I know this guy can't stay healthy. We're going to go get another running back.
Yeah. I mean, regardless of how he feels about DeAndre Swift, they're going to draft one. I mean, they can't continue to go into the season with DeAndre Swift and Roshan Johnson and lose the opportunity of one of these young running backs that are, everyone's saying this is a great running back class, and there's some can't miss guys in there, and for them not to take a shot would just be foolish.
Well, let's keep going on the running back train here. At number 4, we've got running back Tyrone Tracy, a guy who really came on the scene last year as a rookie. A guy you and I talked about, I think, is an interesting player. Had that receiving ability coming out of Purdue, and drafted late in the 5th round. Really did a lot, with his opportunities. Ended up having 839 rushing yards, averaging 4.4 yards per carry and 5 total touchdowns. Also, again, in the receiving game, 53 total targets, 38 catches, 284 yards. Because him being a receiving threat, he may still continue to be involved in the offense. But we just saw Saquon Barkley lead the Philadelphia Eagles essentially to a Super Bowl, and their owner can't sleep because of it. And so now you're talking about a dominant running back class, and they saw how valuable the running back position was for the Giants. I have to think that Tracy is definitely on the bubble, especially if they end up bringing somebody in. It's a risky situation.
Yeah, it is. And I know they really like Tyrone Tracy. I mean, Joe Shane couldn't say enough good things about him in the pre-draft process. He was a guy that they were targeting and wanted, but at the end of the day, they didn't have to spend a high draft capital on him. So that's something to just be mindful of and watch. And, they could easily get more of a generational type of running back. And then Tyrone Tracy falls into more of the receiving back and change of pace, as he is a converted wide receiver at Purdue.
And that's where draft capital does come into play. He was a 5th round pick. If he's a 1st round pick, I understand you're of the philosophy. It doesn't matter where you were picked, how you perform in training camp, you have to earn the job. But when it comes to these teams and where they're going to invest in different positions, if you have a high draft capital, I feel like it's a little less likely you're going to move off of that guy early on.
Yeah. The main thing that the draft capital affords you is if you were a 1st round pick, you get far more opportunities in the league if you get released from a team, and you're more likely to get picked up, and because teams believe that talent is still somewhere in there and the next person thinks they can unlock it.
Well, the opposite of a 1st round pick is going to be the guy we're going to be talking about next year, Joe. So who do we have at number 5?
Yeah, number 5, we got Isiah Pacheco, and really pains me to have him on this list because I really like Isiah Pacheco, and he was a guy I was excited about last year prior to him getting injured. But yeah, you talk about far from a 1st round pick. How about a 7th round pick with Isiah Pacheco? And I really do think there's potential for the Chiefs to go ahead and draft a running back here, because I think they just need somebody that's more dynamic. Pacheco's a really tough runner. I see him and Kareem Hunt, who they brought back, in the same kind of vein. They're just tough, grinded out runners. They'll fall forward and get you a few yards, and you can bank on that. And then it's interesting they go ahead and bring in Elijah Mitchell in free agency as well. But if they add another running back in the draft here, that really tanks Pacheco's value in my eyes.
Yeah, honestly, with them bringing in Elijah Mitchell, that brought even more red flags to me, because if you're bringing in somebody of that caliber, which Mitchell has shown, I mean, he's gotten injured himself, but like if you were confident that Pacheco was coming back, I don't think he'd be making a move like that. Maybe I'm reading into it a little bit, but
I think what they're looking for, and this is my concern, is they really just, to me, what stood out in the Super Bowl was they just really lack a running back that provides them a ton of juice. Like Pacheco is just a really tough runner. Like I said, Kareem Hunt's the same guy. They need somebody with juice, and then probably also somebody that they can utilize in the pass game a little bit more. Get out there, put some stress on the linebackers, and get a guy who can kind of win and be more of a dynamic player and really open up that offense.
Yeah, I really wouldn't be surprised if, as far as the Chiefs go, I kind of see them kind of changing their offensive philosophy. It was kind of a down year all around. I wouldn't be surprised if Andy Reid.
Rasheed Rice also got hurt, so
I get that, but I think the coaching staff might be kind of looking back at what happened over the past year and saying how we can improve things, because it was an uncharacteristic year, I feel like, for the offense for the Chiefs.
Well, I think you're going to see them upgrade the offensive line, or try to, just like they did. That's what they did after they lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they lost in a similar fashion to the way the Eagles did. And their offensive line play just wasn't good enough that year, just like it wasn't good enough this past Super Bowl against the Eagles. I think that's more so what you see versus a change in offense.
So number 6, we're going to be talking about wide receiver George Pickens. Now this one pains me, Joe, that we got this guy here. I've always been a fan of Pickens.
Yeah,
but the reality is, so do the Steelers. And the reality is that now that you got DK Metcalf coming into town, they've invested in him long term, giving him that 5-year contract. So what does that mean for George Pickens going forward? We don't really know. And who's going to be throwing him the ball? Right now it's looking like Mason Rudolph, at the time of this episode. Possibly by the time you're watching it, maybe Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback. Who knows? But now that you got DK Metcalf as probably the number one option, there's just too many unknowns here. And there could be a serious risk as far as what happens. Maybe they draft a guy. I don't think Shedeur Sanders will be there. Maybe they'll go for Dart. Hard to really say. But Pickens' value could definitely take a dip here.
Yeah, it definitely can. And I think I'd just be more worrisome if I really don't. The quarterback situation really doesn't concern me. Look, they're going to figure out a way to get Aaron Rodgers there. And just a matter of when Aaron Rodgers wants to, get his head out of the clouds and pick a team here. It's a matter of when, not if, when it comes to Aaron Rodgers signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's the best situation out there for him. But I'm more concerned if they had another wide receiver. And I'm also just concerned for Pickens already, because they already brought in DK Metcalf, and they're too similar at the wide receiver position. So that alone is just concerning to me.
All right, Joe, so who do we got for number 7?
All right, at number 7, we got tight end Mark Andrews with the Baltimore Ravens. I know everyone's going to put the flack on Mark Andrews for dropping that ball against the Bills in the playoff game here, but I don't know how much the Ravens care about that. But if they go ahead and really, draft one of these dynamic tight ends, he could be at risk. He's only got 1 year left on his deal. I know they also have Isaiah Likely there, but if they add another weapon to the offense with, Lamar Jackson kind of spreading the ball around there, definitely takes away the intrigue, because Mark Andrews really relies on the touchdowns, as he had 11 last year, and that really, kept him fantasy relevant. So if he's not getting those touchdowns in that same red zone target, he's going to be disappointing.
I don't really think, honestly, that Mark Andrews kind of took a dip with the signing of DeAndre Hopkins.
Hopkins has nothing left.
You think he's washed?
He's washed. I mean, it's just a prototypical Ravens move to bring in a veteran wide receiver. Hopkins did absolutely nothing.
At least they didn't do what Diggs did with the Patriots.
Well, the Ravens just don't have that type of money. I mean, otherwise the Patriots needed somebody. Yeah, or else they possibly would. I mean, Hopkins does not concern me at all. To me, he is absolutely washed. He couldn't even be that productive with the Kansas City Chiefs.
Well, either way, I think at the end of the day, I would be surprised. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. If I was a betting man, I think this is Mark Andrews' last year in Baltimore. I don't think they re-sign him back. I think this is a very decent tight end class. I would not be surprised if they draft a tight end. They've got Likely. I think that, I think it's very, very possible that Andrews does not come back. And I think if that's the case, he's been a stalwart in that offense.
That's really not that bold of a take. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's about to be 30 years old and in the last year of his contract. Yeah, I mean, it's easy to say that he's not going to be back next year.
Well, just because his contract expired doesn't mean that the Ravens won't resign him. I mean, you see a guy like Travis Kelce still doing it, and he's 35. So Mark Andrews is not Travis Kelce, but Mark Andrews has been one of the top tight ends, in the NFL. So not to say he can't. I mean, you feel like his career is coming to a close here?
Not saying his career's over. His career in Baltimore is coming to a close after this year, 100%.
Oh, you agree with me?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. But I mean, I think it's kind of obvious. I don't know how,
I guess it's not that obvious to you, but I guess we have consensus. So
yeah, no, I'm not I'm not trying to disagree with you. I was just saying I think the writing's already on the wall there.
Okay, well then we agree. That's not a hot take. At number 8, let's talk about wide receiver Christian Watson, a guy who recently tore his ACL. One of the second round picks that the Packers selected to take a receiver. I've been hearing rumblings that, or at least I saw something, not me personally, but even possibly does Ted McMillan go to the Green Bay Packers. I think that Jaden Reed's job is safe, but everybody else's job is kind of up for grabs. I mean, you've got Dontavian Wicks there. You've got Romeo Doubs. Romeo Doubs can't really stay healthy, nor can Watson. So he's a guy that people were really excited about because of his speed and his ability to stretch the field. I think that at this point, just based on everything that Christian Watson has went through up to this point, I think his value is starting to maybe get to the point where you don't have much left.
Yeah, it definitely is getting to that point. And the one thing that he had going for him is the fact that, the Packers really don't have anyone else that can stretch the field on that team. A lot of those other guys are pretty similar to each other. So he was the main guy that really could stretch the field. You saw, once he went down, Packers offense really struggled because the defense didn't have to worry about a guy taking the top off the defense. But if they go ahead and get another guy like that, and Watson's not the only guy, that's going to be concerning.
So who do we got for number 9, Joe?
All right, at number 9, got another tight end for you, and that's going to be Dallas Goedert with the Philadelphia Eagles. And I definitely think it's a high possibility that they go ahead and draft a tight end. I mean, Goedert he hasn't really ever been able to play a full season outside of, the 2018 season, played all 16 games. But since then, he just hasn't been able to. And recently, he's missed multiple games. And his production's really just kind of gone down. And I know the offense has shifted more towards run first as well. But he was a guy that kind of relied on the yards after the catch as well to really get his yardage. And he's an older guy. He's already 30 years old. I just could see, they got Grant Calcaterra behind him. I think they're going to add somebody else and look to have somebody else for the future.
Well, not to mention, too, he's on the block. He's been on the block for a long time. And a lot of times when a player like that's been on the block for a long time, sooner or later they'll trade him for next to nothing, or they'll maybe even cut him. So that alone for me has him on risk. But like you said, he can't stay healthy. And if they end up drafting a tight end at that point, Goddard's value is going to start going down tubes. So at this point, Goddard is definitely on both of our watch here as far as what happens in the draft. Well, let's round it out here at number 10. It's going to be wide receiver Quentin Johnston of the LA Chargers. You just saw Ladd McConkey emerge to be this dynamic threat for the LA Chargers. And now they brought in an old familiar face. That's wide receiver Mike Williams coming back to the team. So now you got Mike Williams, you've got Ladd McConkey, now you got Quentin Johnston. Johnston's dealt with a lot of drops in his time in LA. He's shown some flashes, but do the Chargers end up, what if they draft a receiver? If they end up drafting a receiver, you got to remember Jim Harbaugh. I don't believe he was there, Joe, right? When Quentin Johnston was selected, that was the year prior before Jim Harbaugh was there. Although Jim spoke very highly of him, at the end of the day, I feel like you could take that stuff with a grain of salt. I feel like these coaches, kind of have flattering comments about a bunch of different players. So it's not necessarily the regime that drafted Quentin Johnston is no longer there. So they have no, rhyme or reason to have to attach this guy. And honestly, he showed a lot of reasons why maybe he's only a situational player for them. So I think you and I both felt like he was a guy to be to be on the radar for us to monitor here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if they do add a receiver or not, or what. Because I mean, the type. I mean, because I do think the type of wide receiver that they do draft would be direct relation to and put it, Quentin Johnston in trouble. Mike Williams, I think, is a Joshua Palmer replacement. He's another guy that likes to just kind of do those fly routes and take deep shots down the field. So that's why, I mean, he is at number 10 for a reason in terms of he's not like on red alert like some of these other players, but it is a situation to monitor.
So that does it for this episode. When you think about these players, our main, I guess, goal of the episode, or what we hope you take away from this, is these are guys that are on the radar for us. Not to say that you're panicking and trading them away. If you want to, by all means, if you want to get ahead of it, go for it. We definitely could see a path for any one of these players, Dynasty, that could just tank based on what happens in the draft, but they could not as well. But this is those preemptive moves, Joe, that we like to think about heading into the draft, because once the drafts happen, we can't rewind the tape. So that does it for this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time.